He fell in love with her because of the rare purity that set this country girl apart. Yet when he chose to abandon her, it was because once the novelty faded, the harsh class divide of reality was something he could never cross. Between an old love covered in dirt and poverty, and a new romance defined by elegance and refined grace, the man decisively chose the latter. This was destined to be a heartbreaking love tragedy with no satisfying ending. A wealthy young man named Frank went on a hiking trip with his friend. While showing off as they climbed over a fence, Frank twisted his ankle and could no longer stand. Just as the two of them were at a loss, a young girl herding livestock appeared in the distance. His friend ran over and briefly explained their situation, and the kind-hearted girl agreed to take them in for the night. Along the way, Frank's friend was thrilled at the thought of staying in a farmhouse. This fresh and unpolished country girl instantly caught the attention of the two young men from the city. Her name was Megan, an orphan who had lost her parents and was raised by her aunt from a young age. Her cousin Joe had grown up with her since childhood, and her two younger cousins were still very young. Strangers rarely visited the mountains, and the warm and hospitable aunt gladly welcomed them into her home. In the eyes of the family, Megan and Joe were a perfect match, and once they came of age, the aunt planned to arrange their marriage. Megan had never expressed any objection to this. During dinner, Megan noticed that the two city youths spoke with wit and humor, and their manners carried an elegance she had never experienced before. Compared to her rough cousin, Megan gained a completely new understanding of man. After the meal, Frank watched Megan playing in the yard with the little boys and could not help sighing that this place felt like paradise on earth. Untouched by the outside world, Megan was like a pure white lotus, filling his mind with endless fantasies. But after only half a day, Frank's friend had already lost interest in the quiet mountain village. He missed the city bars and the music beneath neon lights. Frank, however, was immersed in Megan's laughter coming from the next room, and he said he would stay until his ankle healed before leaving. Early the next morning, Frank's friend left the mountains alone. Every day, Megan carefully applied medicine to Frank's injury. Although Megan could not read or write, she understood the secrets of nature far better than Frank. Their conversations were always full of charm and delight. Watching the girl he loved grow so close to a stranger, Joe became intensely jealous and deliberately revealed his relationship with Megan. But Megan showed no concern for Joe's shifting emotions. In the days that followed, Megan's every move tugged at Frank's heart. He often stared at her from afar in a daze, writing this unfamiliar feeling of love into his diary. At every meal, Megan helped Frank to the dining room. Seeing Megan constantly circling around the city youth, Joe deliberately placed his hand on her shoulder to assert his claim. But Megan no longer showed him the warmth she once had. This was the first time Megan had ever felt her heart stirred. Late at night, she leaned by the window, her mind filled entirely with Frank. The next day, when the aunt brought Frank his breakfast, she told him that Megan had gone to work at a ranch 50 miles away and would not return for 2 days. After confirming that Joe had not gone with her, Frank ran to a neighboring farmhouse to ask for directions and borrowed a bicycle. He could not wait to ride across the hills and fields. Racing toward the ranch was bustling with activity, and Megan was excitedly telling her friends that an interesting young man had come to her home, and that he had called her a lady for the first time. As she spoke of Frank, her eyes sparkled with light. Just after lunch, Frank finally arrived at the ranch after a long and exhausting ride. Megan could not suppress her joy and ran straight toward him, but as she got closer, she slowed her steps, trying to appear composed and reserved. Megan introduced Frank to their work, and the sheep shearing fascinated him, so he eagerly joined in. After the work was finished, the workers washed up. To celebrate a bountiful harvest, the ranch owner prepared a lavish dinner. That night, after a long day of work, the laborers danced freely to cheerful music, their steps light and joyful, ignoring the pain in his ankle. Frank spent the entire dance dancing with Megan. When they grew tired, the two of them went to the backyard. In the romantic atmosphere, Frank wanted to say something, but when the words reached his lips, he hesitated and swallowed them back. At night, the men slept in the storage shed, while the women slept on beds inside the house. Megan tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep, and in the middle of the night she hugged a blanket and quietly came to the place where Frank was resting. The late autumn moonlight was like a catalyst, and whether driven by love or by the most primal desire, Frank could not help but ask Megan to stay. That night, Megan gave everything she had to a man she had known for only a week. In order not to arouse the family's suspicion, Frank pretended to be drunk and lay by the roadside on Megan's way home, waiting for the boys sent to look for her to find him, so they could all return together by carriage. In the days that followed, their feelings grew more intense. Seeing that Frank's leg had mostly healed yet he showed no intention of leaving, the family began to grow suspicious. The aunt had no choice but to order Frank to leave. For the two young people deeply in love, separation was unbearably painful. The next day, the aunt deliberately sent Joe to take Megan to the market, hoping she would miss Frank's departure. Unexpectedly, Frank hit on the back mountain, and when Megan returned, he rushed down the slope like a madman. If Frank had never entered her life, Megan might have willingly married her cousin, but after meeting Frank, everything changed. Frank wanted to elope with Megan. He promised to go to town first to withdraw money from the bank, buy train tickets to London, and then come back for her. In the thin mist on the west side of town, Megan waved goodbye to him. Filled with complete trust in Frank, the seaside town was unusually prosperous, and after asking for the bank's location, Frank went inside without wasting a moment. But the bank had a rule that they had to contact the deposit office in London, complete an audit and verification, and receive a telegram before releasing the cash. With closing time approaching, Frank could only come back the next day. The waiting felt endlessly long, and while looking for a hotel, Frank unexpectedly ran into his college classmate Halliday at a street corner. Halliday invited him to dinner at a restaurant, along with Halliday's sister Stella and his two younger sisters. They had arrived from London a week earlier for a vacation. Stella was elegant and composed, and in that instant, Frank felt as if he had returned to the life he once belonged to, far away in the mountain village. Megan gazed into the distance while herding livestock, her face filled with sorrow. Joe showed concern for her with heartfelt tenderness, and Megan responded as she had when they were children, leading Joe to mistakenly believe that she was beginning to forget Frank. When Frank went to the bank again the next day, the clerk told him that the telegram from London had still not arrived. All the cash he carried with him had already been spent, so he could only use his last few coins to send Megan a telegram at the post office. With no other choice, he went to find Halliday again. They went swimming by the sea together, while Stella sat on the rocks sketching. Halliday accidentally swallowed water while swimming, and fortunately Frank noticed in time and pulled him back from the brink of death. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Halliday invited Frank to stay at their hotel. But when Frank told Halliday about his story with Megan, Halliday did not encourage him.
It's a funny thing, you know, thinking you're drowning. They say the whole of your life passes before your eyes. That I didn't have to feel guilty about it.
Halliday's words echoed in Frank's mind for the entire afternoon. As Frank stood staring at the sea, Stella walked over. Two people matched in background and education seemed naturally drawn to each other. Stella was curious about the melancholy Frank and wanted to understand him. On the third day, the bank finally received the telegram. Frank bought a bouquet of flowers and rushed to the train station, but still missed the last train. The ticket clerk told him that the next 2 days were the weekend and train service was suspended. His plan to go pick up Megan was delayed once again. That afternoon, as Megan was confiding her doubts to a friend, the postman happened to deliver Frank's telegram. Even though it contained only 5 short words, Megan instantly felt relieved. What she did not know was that in just one short weekend, the love she believed to be unbreakable was about to be completely shattered by an accomplished upper-class woman. With no trains running over the weekend, Frank spent all his time with Halliday and his sisters. Stella was intelligent and graceful, always able to soothe Frank's restless heart. They had endless topics to talk about, and Stella's insights into literature, astronomy, geography, and painting constantly amazed Frank, making him feel they had met far too late. Meanwhile, Megan missed Frank every single moment. Her friend encouraged her, saying that perhaps Frank had run into trouble, and that she should bravely leave the mountains and maybe even help him. While Frank and Stella were perfectly in harmony at the dance, Megan quietly packed her belongings. Having never traveled far before, she felt no fear of loneliness and bravely set out to search for Frank. Early the next morning, Megan finally arrived in the town, surrounded by a thriving modern world. Her country girl clothing made her look painfully out of place. Without stopping to rest, she asked around everywhere for Frank's whereabouts. Passing by a church, Megan glanced inside and walked on. She had no idea that Frank and Stella were inside, happily singing together. In this unfamiliar city, every step Megan took was difficult. The surging crowds swallowed her up, and even when she and Frank were only a meter apart, they tragically passed each other by. As Frank and Stella talked about ideals and faith by the seaside, a familiar figure suddenly entered his view. The girl he had loved desperately just days earlier now triggered an instinctive reaction in him: avoidance. In panic, he grabbed Stella and hurried away from the shore. By the end of the day, Megan was exhausted and starving, yet she refused to give up. After escorting Stella back to the hotel, Frank returned alone to look for Megan, his heart filled with conflicting emotions. He followed silently behind her, watching her thin and helpless figure, overwhelmed with mixed feelings. Seeing the girl who loved him so deeply reduced to such loneliness, he still lacked the courage to call out to her. They walked one in front of the other for over a mile. As if sensing something, Megan suddenly stopped and turned around. Frank's figure appeared before her eyes, but at that moment, a worker carrying a mirror passed between them, and the reflected glare forced Megan to shield her eyes. When she looked again, Frank was gone. She thought it was just her imagination and turned back to continue walking, hiding in the corner of a wall. Frank barely dared to breathe, his behavior cowardly and shameful. After that single turn, they never saw each other again. 20 years passed in the blink of an eye, and a middle-aged man with graying hair appeared on the mountain opposite Megan's home. Gazing down at the house below for a long time, the farmer who had once lent Frank a bicycle recognized him, but chose not to expose his identity. The farmer led Frank to the place where he and Megan had first met, and told him that a poor girl named Megan was buried there. Frank's heart trembled violently, and he urgently asked what had happened.
What happened then?
The farmer sighed and slowly explained.
Then one evening, she were back. I never saw a human creature so changed in my life. Never. We'd often see her waiting by the bridge for him, staring at the track, like a lost soul she were. It weren't long afore we all knew why. She were taken to her bed that February, though she'd reckoned on Easter. 3 days it took, and 4 nights. We laid her to rest up here on the moor. The poor loving-hearted girl.
According to Megan's wishes, she had been buried on this mountaintop. She wanted to lie there and continue waiting for her lover's return. Hearing this, Frank was deeply shaken. He then asked the farmer how the child was doing now. The farmer replied that the child had grown up healthy and was now an excellent hunter. Frank opened his mouth to say something, but his wife's voice suddenly called out from nearby. It turned out that Stella, who loved painting, had come here specifically to sketch scenery. In order to keep Stella from learning about his past, Frank ended this long overdue act of atonement at the sound of her voice. He did not give his name, did not stop to confess his sins, and did not even place a single flower on Megan's grave. Like a stranger listening to a story, he abandoned Megan once again. On the way down the mountain, Stella noticed nothing unusual about her husband. Before long, a tall, strong young man with blonde hair stood by the roadside holding a hunting rifle and game, kindly making way for Frank's car. Looking into the boy's pure eyes, Frank instantly recognized him as the son he had with Megan, but he did not stop the car, and simply watched the boy disappear into the distance. This poor child was destined to share a fate similar to Megan's, born without parents and forced to survive under someone else's roof. Perhaps if Frank had never appeared 20 years ago, Megan might have been living a peaceful and happy life today.